Okay, so what are workers' compensation laws? Well, these are state or federal laws that require employers to either privately, to self insure, or to pay into a state program where it insures an employee who is injured on the job that if they're injured, then they can file a workers' compensation claim and receive a certain percentage of their salary, even though they're injured and can't continue to work. Okay. And depending on whether it's what state it is or whether it's under federal law, that generally there's a certain number of employees that have to be in place to qualify to have to purchase workers' compensation. But the number is generally very low in most states, and in some states as low as one. So, with that in mind, the employer purchases the workers' compensation insurance. If the employee, while working in the scope of employment, suffers an injury and can't continue to work, then they can file that workers' compensation claim. And again, the Workers' Compensation Commission or the private agency used to provide that insurance or the employer who's self-insured has to pay a percentage of that salary to the employee during their period where they cannot continue to work. Now, the core aspect of workers' compensation is it provides protection to both parties. While the employer pays these insurance premiums, it looks like it's a benefit to just the employee, but it's a benefit to the employer just as much. Say an employee is injured on the job, the employee may only have a recourse to sue the employer for any negligence or lack of safety on the workplace that could have caused the injury. Okay, the employer now has insurance protection against that because the employee is limited. They can make a workers' compensation claim, but they cannot, outside of that, sue the employer. So this seems like it's a detriment to the employee, but by the same token, say it's a smaller employer, the employee sues that employer. It could take months or years to recover, if they recover at all from the employer. That could sever the relationship or even put the employer out of business. So that would ultimately detriment the employee even further. So with that in mind, it protects the employer from these lawsuits. It protects the employee from being in a situation where they can't have or can't recover any funds or anything like that from the employer because of the risk of severing relationships or putting the employer out of business in that way. So it protects both parties in that way. But again, it's paid for by the employer, and the varying state or federal laws will have different requirements on the employer with how they go about securing that workers' compensation insurance.